Hello, so this video is to review how to use possessive adjectives in French. It's something you have been doing actually since year 7 when we were using my, your, his and her. So we'll be reviewing how to use those and adding the other two possessive adjectives that you have in English and how to use them in French, our and their. Okay? As we go through this, I would recommend that you have in front of you, if you can print it out, the sheet on adjectives that I put on Google Classroom. Then you can annotate the sheet if you want to with some of the things from this video. So we're looking at the section that looks like this. So firstly, when you were in year 7, you have specially focused on those three here, the three ways of saying my, mon, ma, and me. I'm just going to start with those here and look at the table and the details that are written above. So very important to think of possessive adjectives, so my, your, his, her, etc. They tell you who something belongs to. And when we have to decide between the three options, because in English you have one option, we have three. So if you say my mother, it doesn't matter whether you are a boy or a girl. What matters is that the mother, the thing that you own, is feminine. So you're going to be picking ma. Okay. So these columns here is this thing described or owned, not who owns it. Who owns it is from the lines here. Okay. Then in year 7, we got familiar with your singular and his and her, and we were using those a fair amount. I'm hoping that you should be reasonably comfortable with mon maman, but ton tase, son sase work in the same way. So you can see that my, they all start with M, your, they all start with T, and his and her all start with S. Then if you look at the columns, they all end with ON, ON, AAA, ES, ES, ES. As we start the GCSE course, we need to get comfortable with the range of possessive adjectives. So not just my, your, his and her, but also our and their. There's another your as well, of course, as you know with verbs in French. So we have a different way of saying your when we're talking to a group of people when it's plural, or if we're being formal, if we're being polite. They follow a slightly different pattern, however, they are still very logical. And we'll go through this in this video. So firstly, the first letter, which I've put in bold, is the same again, LL, VV, NN. Also, it is the same first letter for these two here as with the pronouns. We is nous, N-O-U-S, and so it starts with an N when you say our. You guys, or y'all, or you formal, is vous, which starts with a V, and so your also starts with a V. This one is slightly different, but we still have the same pattern where it's L here and L here, and we just added an S. So at GCSE, to do the foundation course, you need to be able to use my and his and her correctly, and you'd be expected to recognize most of the rest. Candidates that are aiming for higher, it is definitely doable. What we want is for you to use a range of possessive adjectives, so not just my, his and her. It may mean that you don't use every single one of them, and it may mean that you prepare a little bit more for the ones you'll be using in writing or in speaking. But you want to show that you're able to use more than just my, his and her, and you should be able to recognize the rest. So you recognize what they mean and you are not confused by them if they come up in a text, for example. Okay, so let's look through some examples. Firstly, I've just moved this here. We're going to do this in 2 steps for every example. Firstly, we're going to pick the line and decide who owns it. Is it my thing, your thing, his and her thing, etc. And secondly, we're going to pick the column and we're going to decide what that thing is that is owned or described. Is it masculine, feminine, or plural? I would strongly recommend as we do this that you pause before I show the answer, and perhaps you have a bit of paper next to you and you jot down what your answer would be. And at this stage that you do every step 1 and 2 as I do it. At this stage we are practicing. Okay, so example number 1, my daughter. So step number 1, who owns it? It's going to be my, so it's going to be from this line here. And then I need to look up the word daughter in my vocab list or in a dictionary. So once I find it, it's fille, and in front of it, it will say la fille, and it's going to tell me that it's feminine. Of course, because it's a person, it's quite obvious that it's feminine, but it is a good habit to look at the word in a vocab list to do that transformation. So I'm going to be in this column here, it's feminine, and I knew I was in this line, so ma fille is my daughter. Right, let's move to one where it's a bit less obvious if it's masculine or feminine. So his cat. Okay, step number 1, who owns it? And so his cat, so it's going to be in this line here for his and her. In English, you differentiate between his and her. In French, we don't. Son, for example, will mean his or her. Ça will mean his or her. C'est will mean his or her. We don't give this information in this word. So we're going to get used to that with this practice. His cat, we're going to be in this line here. Now I'm going to look up cat in a vocab list that would have been from year 7. So le chat, and chat is masculine because it has le in front of it. So I would be looking in this column here. I was in this line here. So the word I'm looking for is son chat. And actually, to say her cat, I would also say son chat, because what matters is not the gender of who owns it. What matters is the gender, or if it's plural, of the thing you are describing. Okay, number 3, his sister. So step number 1, who owns it? He owns it. So his, it's the same line as before. And then sister, if I look it up in my list, again, it's a person, so it's quite obvious. But if I look it up, it's going to say la sœur, so it's feminine. So I'm going to be looking in the column for feminine and the line for his and her, and I'm going to write sa sœur. Let's do number 4, our cat. So step number 1, who owns it? Our, so I'm going to be looking in that line here, and I have 2 options, notre or nos. And I need to decide here, is cat masculine, feminine, or plural? So I looked it up earlier in the dictionary and I said that it was masculine. Now here, in that table, masculine and feminine are actually the same. So I could have gone a little bit faster and decided, well, there's not many of them. It's not plural, so it's going to be notre. But it is good to just do step number 1 and step number 2 so that you really get used to use that table. Notre chat, our cat. Let's do number 5 to finish. Our cats. So step number 1, who owns it? Same line as earlier, our, notre or nos. And cats. Now, again, if I look up in the dictionary, it will say le chat, it's masculine. But what do I see here? Cats. There is an S. So, although I do still need to look it up in the dictionary so I get the right spelling, I choose the last column, plural. There are many cats. And so I'm going to say nos chats. We need to be able to spot those plurals when you see them. Most of them will be words, nouns that finish with an S. Sometimes it might be an X. So it might be actually that you do it, firstly you check if something is plural, and if it's not, then you check if it's masculine or feminine. So there are a handful of exceptions and they all follow the same rule, and it's written on the handout I've given you. If a feminine word begins with a vowel, we use the masculine form, mon, ton, and son here. It won't matter if it's our, your, and their, because there's only one word. The most commonly that you'll be using it is with these 2 words, ami, for female friend. You will not say ma ami, you will say mon ami. And this is something that we see very often in French when you have vowels. If you have a vowel at the start of a word, often it affects the word in front of it. Sometimes we remove a letter, but in this case, we actually change the word. It's just because it sounds better, it's easier to say. Mon ami. Same thing here with my school, mon école, because école starts with a vowel. So to recap, you have 2 steps when you decide which word to use. Firstly, you choose which line you will be using by deciding who owns it. Is it my, your, his, her, etc. Once you have decided on your line, you look at the word, the thing or the person you're describing or that is owned, that is mine and yours, etc. You look at that word and then you decide, is it masculine, is it feminine, or is it plural? This will allow you to pick the correct column. Once you have that correct word, you can carry on with your sentence. So 2 steps.